Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to a Sunday live stream. Today is the 20th of October, and I've had a haircut, so I'm looking a bit younger because I definitely starting to look quite grey now. I turned 40 this year, so I'm a proper old bloke. But today's discussion is going to be basically the points changes. So by now you've definitely seen the points changes come through the Minotaur Field Manual. We're going to explore it in a lot of detail, and I will draw on my discussion with David Gaylard. You might have seen I spoke to this week, had a fantastic interview. And also we'll check out a chap called Nassim who came first in the Birmingham GT in the UK. It was 70 players. That was using the old points. So just a couple of updates from my perspective. My end is that I've played a couple of games actually using different armies. So me and my battle brother Adam King are aspiring competitive players, both new dads. We've both had kids just recently, or a kid recently, so don't have much time. And we basically agreed on TTS to basically practice across different armies. G'day, Watchdog Van Etten. Nice to see you. Tank Commander, thank you. And we've definitely taken the perspective that if we learn different armies, it could be better for us as individuals. So far, I've played Orcs, and I've just played last night Space Wolves, Thunder Cavalry Jar, which was with the old points. And then Adam has played Imperial Knights, and he actually is a Black Templar player. So definitely trying different armies is a very interesting experience. I got no idea how to play either Orcs or Space Wolf Thundercav Jail, and I lost the Space Wolf game into Adam's Black Templars, and Black Templars are his home army by about 45 points. And then I lost against him with my Orcs by about 20 points, and that's because I just don't know how to manage those armies. So really good sort of learning how to basically play them. And the key thing with Space Wolves is just to rush your entire army forward, which I didn't do. I tried to be a guard commander and sort of be quite cagey and fed stuff out. And what I should have actually done is just rushed the 3 blobs of Thunder Cavalry Space Wolf Wolf Riders into his deployment zone turn 1 or turn 2, but I didn't. I chose to be quite conservative. And with Orcs, I did okay, but again, I think it's great experience trying different armies. I've never played Orcs, never played Space Wolves. And it was fantastic to sort of feel how those lists work. And again, I think my play style is very controlling, quite deliberate. And to be honest, Space Wolf Thundercav Jar, which obviously has been nerfed now, was simply just to rush your opponent. And if they can't manage things, they're going to die. But very good experience, and I definitely recommend those out there that don't have TTS to give it a go. Tabletop Simulator, it is an absolute faff to get started, but once it's set up and going, it's fantastic from a practice point of view, because obviously you can play many different armies and play people around the world, which is fantastic. So definitely try out Tabletop Simulator. It's a fantastic resource. Now, as I said, you also would have seen this week I had a fantastic interview with David Gaylard, a Kiwi bloke living in London. He is the world's best guard player, and he's the 5th best player in the world, which is just mind-boggling. You think of his expertise in inverted commas. Now, definitely David is obviously very highly intelligent, and I got the sense when I spoke to Lewis Smith last week. He's a Tau player. He went, I think, 5th in the LGT London Grand Tournament. He's also highly intelligent. Now, stick with me here when I discuss this, is that we are obviously all intelligent in different ways. Now, for example, I'm awful at chess. I suck at chess. I'm actually practicing now on my phone, and I get to beginner level and I struggle. I'll miss. So I think there's a certain sort of intelligence behind 40K, and this is all obvious when you say everything requires intelligence. But for some people, I think they just get it. And I don't count myself as one of those. I think for me, it's going to take a lot of hard work and consistent practice to become good at it, because in chess, it's quite obvious. You have to think about where the piece goes, what else can do, interact with it. And 40K is the same. Yeah, good, okay. So Watchdog Van Etten in the chat is saying he sucks at chess. Good, we can be crap together. Thank you. Thank you, Watchdog Van Etten. But yeah, and having spoken to David and Lewis Smith last week, is that you can see from speaking to those two chaps that they can just plan out things like multiple phases, multiple turns ahead. And I think a great one that Lewis said is the Tau player. He has the Sunshark bomber, that massive, massive plane, which can only arrive, I think, in turn 2 or turn 3, whatever it is. And basically, you don't have it for 2 turns because obviously it doesn't appear. And when it does appear, you have to make sure it works. Now, that thing's output is ridiculous. I played into Lewis in one of his practice games before he played at a GT, and I think he actually won that GT. And that thing basically blew up a Rogal Dawn in one go. And then Overwatch Overwatch from a Sunshock bomber is just terrifying. So, but the point is that using that piece is very deliberate because you need to position the entire tabletop that when it comes in, it can cause maximum damage. Now, this is again a point I made to David Gallard in my interview with him, was that just because a top player can use a unit doesn't mean suckers like me can use it. Yeah, and that's definitely, as we look at the list discussion in a moment, something we have to keep in mind, because definitely just because they can use it doesn't mean, again, idiots like me and maybe some of you out there can do the same thing. So we have to be realistic in that sense. But definitely speaking to David was a fantastic experience. I learned a lot from his perspective, and as I said in a couple of you in some comments, is that often it takes the smartest of people to identify the simplest of things, because 40k as a game actually is bloody simple. Yeah, when you actually talk it out, and now before I get into that, that assumes you understand the game overall. You know, you're not struggling to work out toughness versus strength and what the role is, but you've been playing for a bit of time and you get the game conceptually. But to get good, you actually have to break it down to be very simple, but that is actually really hard. Now, when you add on the overlay of time, this is a discussion I had with, I think David off camera, is that definitely in 40k, it does feel quite weird when you say, let's use a clock, because it's like, oh, you're going to be all like, oh, you know, clicking it, topping it. Oh, but I'm going in different places. But I think the use of a clock actually is completely fair, because what other games out there don't use time as a constraint? So I think, and again, I spoke it with David, is that time in, say, a football match is a shared resource. It's equal. But in 40k, obviously, it's your turn, their turn, your turn, their turn. So that's a bit of a limiting factor. But I think that the concept of time is obviously one we should all think about actually incorporating, because if the game went on forever, it would be a very different experience as opposed to saying a 3 hour or 2 hour 45 or 2.5 hour game you're doing tournaments, or maybe with your mate, you know, your local friendly gaming store, just home you agree a 4 hour time limit. Now, the reason why I speak about all that time stuff is that when you add on all that natural complexity of 40k plus time constraints, that's when it gets hard, yeah? Because again, 40k is a simple game, but for idiots like me, basically trying to work everything out when I've only got, say, 10 minutes in my turn, for example, makes it very, very hard. So I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, because it's not, and obviously it's not, because you know, we're not all winning players. All right, so I'm just sort of rambling off through that because I'm really sort of thinking about how I get better at 40k, because I do have aspirations to, you know, to go 4-1 one day, or maybe even, God forbid, 5 wins, 0 losses. But that is going to be probably on 2 years of work, consistent hard work. And again, just like those of you out there that are parents, like I've got a little baby girl now, is that your time basically runs out. So just checking, Alan. Hi, Alan Ramon, saying, I struggle with remembering everything, which means I never know the true threat of opponent's pieces, which means I just guess. Yes, so that, Alan, is a really, really good point, because, and again, David in the interview, which you probably have listened to, it was a great interview, definitely recommended, is that he talks about encyclopedic knowledge of other armies. Now, that is a big ask, yeah, because how many armies are there? So if we, I don't know, let's just say there's 20, all the Space Marine flavors, and then all the Xenos, and obviously Imperium, and obviously Chaos as well. There's multiple flavors. And definitely 40k is a lot more streamlined compared to the old editions. There's a lot less rules overall, but still, to know what 20 armies do at a level where you can quickly basically look at a unit and go, that unit is not going to one-shot a Rogal Dawn, for example, or it's not going to threaten the OC of 10 jungle fighters and objective. That takes a lot of knowledge. Now, you can overcome that with questions in the game, but you probably want to go into a game knowing that when you play Votan, they don't move very fast, but they're super shooty, and they don't have much melee. Well, mate, I don't actually know if that's true. But definitely, Alan, I think it is hard. And then I think another piece which you should definitely nail is just knowing your units. And that then gets on to maybe simplicity of list builds, and just choosing specific multiples of the same unit to keep it simple for baby brain. So I don't want to ramble too much, because that's been 9.5 minutes of me thinking about over-analyzing what is overall as a board game, a kid's board game, you could basically say. It's not a kid's board game, but you know what I mean. But let me now pull up Chrome tab. Why is it not working? I need to basically pull up, excuse me, viewers. I need to basically make this work. So I'm going to now share the point changes. Here we go. Got it. Okay. So Now, obviously, you would have seen the points changes. There's multiple other YouTubers out there, Katie and Sergeant Steele, obviously more than Glad have all spoken about this. So hopefully nothing here is a surprise to anybody. But one thing to remember with the points changes is that overall, it's good in the sense nothing dramatic has changed. Now, that being said, this was just a points change with a couple of key changes. It wasn't like a true balance data set where they basically changed everything in an army, for example. So our universe has stayed the same in the sense the army still functions the same. They didn't go and say, remove voice of command for something drastic. But again, you all have probably seen this. So Bulgryns have gone up by 20 points for 3 or 40 points for 6. Tank commanders have gone up by 200 points, but have gained the squadron keyword, which obviously is key. And then a couple of other units have had some changes. So Field Ordnance Battery went down, Heavy Weapon Squad went down, Ogryns went down, and also Scout Sentinels have gone down. Now, I don't, but the point changes. I think the Field Ordnance Battery might have been 10 points. Heavy Weapon Team, was it 10 points maybe, or 5 points? Ogryns, I don't know, was it 10 points? I don't know. And then Scout Sentinels went down by 5 points per model. So you could probably say that these other ones are just sort of like scrapings around the edge of the barrel, in inverted commas. Now, Ogryns definitely is one to think about. I think the Field Ordnance Battery still is not great. Maybe 100 points for 2. Maybe it's got a roll, but I think fundamentally its base is way too big. It's just massive, so you can't actually fit it in many places. And then, given it's only toughness 4, it just gets eaten alive. Heavy Weapon Squad, maybe that's got some potential to spam loads of those, because 3 heavy bolters or 3 las cannons or 3 mortars is 3 las cannons and 3 mortars, so that could be tasty. And the Scout Sentinels, I don't know if they needed a drop because they are used, but that's good because I use them. And we'll come back to Ogryns here because that requires a specific discussion. Now, let's drill the Tank Commander piece. Again, you've all seen this, you've all heard it, but I think one thing to think about with the... can you see the screen? Can you see it now? I can't see anything by the sounds. Or if you can't see the screen, tell me, and I think you should be able to see it. If it's not, it's good. So the Tank Commander obviously gained the squadron keyword, and I have seen a couple of comments out there, both on stuff I've posted plus other people, and some people are like, this just feels dumb. Like, why did they give it the squadron keyword? Why didn't it have the squadron keyword? And 20 points actually is a nerf. Now, of course, different opinions will go different ways. Now, obviously, adding squadron means they can self-order, they can order each other, and they get lethal hits. Now, that obviously is crucial. And again, referring to David Gaylard, is that he basically asked in my interview, he said, for a theoretical question, would you pay 20 points if there was an enhancement to give the tank commander the squadron keyword? And the answer is probably yes, because then you can self-order when you come in from reinforcements, and as I said, you get lethal hits. Now, 225 points is 225 points. It's basically an eighth of your army, so, albeit 250 if it was an eighth, but you know what I mean? So it's quite expensive. Now, with that being said, does this suddenly make tank commanders more common in lists that are played by Asgard commanders? Because definitely as we look at, thank you, Alan, for letting me know you can see the screen. Definitely as we look at some of the competitive lists, and I've got Nassim's list to look in a second, is that they use tank commanders. And as I admit, I think tank commanders aren't actually that good, because shoot on death, go off on a 2, you can still roll a 1, you can't re-roll that. And then from my experience, I typically lose my tanks to melee, not shooting, and that could be player skill related. So with tank commanders, personally, this hasn't impacted me at all because I never ran them, but should I be running them? And I'm going to look at a couple of fictitious lists in a moment. Now, the other one is in Bulgryns. Yeah, now this obviously was well expected, and I think a way to conceptualize the 2 ones that went up is the tank commander actually had a buff. 20 points to get squadron is a buff. Let's agree that, yeah. But to go up by 20 points on 3 models with no change is a nerf, obviously. Now, again, depending how many models you ran, how many Bulgryns you ran, if you run the maximum 18, you've gone up 120 points, which is material. If you ran at 12 like I did, you've gone up by, math help me, 90 points, I think it is, or 100 points, which is all material. So the way to think about this, and I said it to some of you patrons out there on my little mini Discord, quite Discord, but lots of good people in there, is that the way to think about the Bulgryns is, do you basically keep everything the same and cut something out of your list to accommodate that? Do you remove Bulgryns and replace them with a different unit? Or do you completely change your play style? Because I think for me, and this may be representative of a lot of you out there, is that Bulgryns are a bit of a what's the word? A crutch? Yeah, crutch when you've like busted your ankle, because they're just so good. And potentially, if you take them out, you're going to struggle a lot more than you currently. And I'm saying this from my perspective, because definitely I feel Bulgryns have just been great at just getting in the way of things. And as I think in my games I've played recently with Guard, is that they are just fantastic. They just stand there and don't go anywhere. And their output is actually decent-ish. Yeah, obviously hitting on threes, wounding on threes into most things is somewhat reliable over the course of many, many games. Now, if we take them out and you change the play style, I'm just thinking that we're going to have to go back to like, all within reason, play style of 9th edition. Now, that was many, many years ago, a year ago now. And I'm thinking it almost goes back to traditional Guard play, which is infantry, for example, and tanks. Now, again, I semi-explored this question with Mr. Gaylard, and his perspective was, you could replace them with certain units, but replacing what they do is very challenging because, again, this is how brainy this guy is that, he's like, they serve several purposes. They can stand objectives and absorb damage. They can contest objectives and they can threaten a countercharge, very, very heroic intervention. Now, nothing else really in the book that we've got at the moment is good for melee. I mean, you got Strachan with some jungle fighters, but they're not going to last as long as 6 Bulgryn, obviously. And if you remove Bulgryns and just rely on traditional screening methodology, we've probably grown up with some of us Guard commanders, that is actually that's a hard way to play. Now, as I get to some of the lists I'll look at in a second, is that I think actually if I take Bulgryns out of my list, I'll do way worse because, again, I'm not the best player. I openly admit that. I play maybe once or twice a week. And again, I'm not the smartest chess player, so I'm probably not good at 40K. But I think I need Bulgryns. I personally need them. So I'm going to have to find a way to basically cut corners in my list. Now, a crucial thing as well is obviously our glorious Tempestus Aquilons of obviously, they're officially 90 points, so they're always 90 points, but they're there. And again, expert insight is when I went to David's place in London, he had 30 of them sat in a box he was painting. So he thinks they're good. And then as we look at Nassim playing in Birmingham, he's taken 20. So Jeff is chasing the meta for the first time in a while, and I've got 10 on the desk behind me, and I've got 10 more coming from eBay. But then maybe Aquilons are a unit which replace Bulgryns. Let me just check the chat. Have any got any? Okay, no comments yet. But I think, and again, I keep drawing on David Gala because I mean that was just an amazing 3 hours of chatting with him. Is that he's like, if you've got Aquilons and they can't even get to you because you just rapid ingress these bad boys 3 inches away and they can't charge anything because they're just wrapped up, do you need Bulgryns? So maybe Aquilons are the answer to the question because, again, it's like Bulgryns are great roadblocks and they can absorb damage. Aquilons are good roadblocks and they can do it so much more effectively because obviously deep strike 3 inches is deep strike 3 inches and obviously rapid ingress makes them amazing. And the one time I've used them, I played against Adam King, my battle brother. He played Knights. Is basically they twice rapid ingress using the reinforcement stratagem to bring them back to life because then he played 1 to basically keep 3 Knights stuck behind a terrain piece. Now that's one small example. Obviously Knights they can't move. Well, they're massive vehicles. Against infantry they'll be maybe less effective, but definitely Aquilons. As I look at my notes, what are they basically doing? They're screening you, they're blocking units, and they're performing actions. So with Aquilons, you've got no excuses now not to be able to pull off most of your action secondaries, albeit those which require you to survive. They have to survive to the next turn, obviously. But these models here, they feel very, very effective. I think 90 points it's probably accurate because, and I know some of the patrons out there, Tank Commander, Watchdog Venice in the chat, he's been using Aquilons and he's found the damage output to be pretty good against infantry because you're getting lethal hits. You've always got 2 shots because they're assault 2. You've got a melter or a plasma, and you've got the double shooting sentry gun, and you've got a sniper rifle. So they're going to pick up low level stuff. Yeah, they're not going to pick up like Terminators, obviously, or Custodians, for example, but they're very, very good. Now, let me just check the chat because I think someone said something. So then, yeah, okay. And then someone's saying in Germany, our top players are saying Aquilons are all broken, totally broken. Now, yeah, so now I think, and again, your perspective is important here, but the term broken for me would probably be like the 9th edition days when we had Khazrakan bombs with overcharged Laser Stratagem punching out like 18 mortal wounds. Now, that's broken because they were deleting things. Now, maybe Aquilons are broken because they're so cheap and there are 10 of them that they can string out and basically block everything. So maybe that is classified broken. But I would hate to think that come the December balance data, like which GW have said they'll release one end of this year, it's going to be December, that they go and whack these points, they go and increase these by like 30 points and make them 120, and suddenly you're like, oof, can I use them anymore? Because I think it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we all say they're broken, and then it's going to get to GW maybe that they are broken, but then on the flip side, if David Gaylord is the world's best place taking 30 of them, they're pretty good. And Nassim's taking 20s, we'll look at in a second. But I think definitely they feel quite effective, but they're not going to one-shot things, but they're just going to be super annoying because 3-inch deep strike is probably quite unique. Because what also has got 3-inch deep strike out in the wider universal 40k? Obviously, you've got the plasma, Space Marine Inceptors, I think they're called. You've got Grey Knights, I think they have them. Gene Stealer Cults, have they got them? James, Watchdog Vanity, I don't know. But I think what makes these guys unique is the fact that there's 10 of them, they're cheap, and then obviously the footprint, you can make them quite long, so you can fully block things out, albeit they can't do anything. So maybe Aquilons are the answer to the loss of the Bulgryns. But again, with Bulgryns, I mean, if you're only playing 12, that is, I'm going to butcher math, help me please everyone, 3, I should be better. Whatever, like you've gone up by 100 points just to pretend. Or if you're playing 9, you've gone up by 60, or 80 or 60, whatever it is that maybe you just keep it as it is. Maybe you don't have to touch the edges because Bulgryns are still good. They haven't lost. If they lost their -1 damage, that would destroy their data sheet completely. Yeah. Now on that is then Ogryns. So the Ogryns squad at 60 points is really cheap. So basically, you're paying 60 points for 9 toughness 6 wounds with 6 up feel no pain and a 5 up save, which is the same as a Cadian infantry squad, which is obviously 10 wounds at toughness 3, 5 plus save with nothing fancy on the top. Now, can they replace Bulgryns? Now, at 60 points for 3 versus 110 points, you're basically paying half price here, albeit you don't have a 4 up invul save, you don't have -1 damage. But then you get basically, as all you know, is that within 9 inches, you're basically getting, is it 6 heavy bolter shots? I think it is 6 heavy bolter shots. I believe I should know this better than I do it. And I do. I'm getting loads of DACA. And if you're shooting a close visible target, you get extra AP. So you're basically getting AP2 bolters, heavy bolters. And again, I keep referencing Watchdog Van Etten in the chat, one of my tank commanders, is that you put him in a Chimera. Chimera is 70 plus the Ogryns squad, that's 130. Or it's roughly the same points cost as a Bulgryn squad. Is that the solution? Is that the alternative? Because you put him in a Chimera, obviously that's going to take 2 activations to destroy them, 2 units to do shooting, or one shooting, then 1 melee. And, Chimeras aren't necessarily easy to pop open because they've got a 3+ save, which is a 3+ save and cover. You can pop smoke, etc. And then with the Ogryns shooting at the top, you've got the 2 boys laying down DACA. You've actually got a fair bit of DACA bus coming out of the little party bus. So maybe that's the solution. But I think, I don't know. And again, I'm far from the best player. I'm just putting the Ogryns stats. Let's have a look. Let me get this right. So, yeah, you get +1 AP, shooting a close to visible target. So that's AP2. And yeah, okay, it is 6 shots if you're firing within 9 inches, which is frankly ridiculous. So if you're getting out of the Chimera, you've got then 12 shots out of the top from the boys in the firing deck. And then if you've got heavy bolt on the top, of the bottom, that's 6 shots. That is, gosh, that's 18 shots. Oh boy, it's quite tasty actually. And the best thing actually, I was going to say actually, because they're not regiment, they wouldn't get lethals. Okay, that's something, but that's okay. So maybe this is an alternative, and I was just thinking how I could do this because I've got loads of Bulgryn painted, but you know, maybe just, and hopefully if you go to a tournament, you just say, look, these are Ogryns because they're the same footprint. They're just as muscly, but I don't want to paint up another 12 Ogryns because that would kill me because I've got to paint up 20, 25 Scions behind me. So maybe Ogryns are the answer. Maybe. Let's just check the chat for any perspectives out there. So I'm just going to check. Cool. Okay, so someone has said, I'm going to use Ogryns to fill the Bulgryn niche now. Toughness 6 and 6 up fill no pain is still excellent. You will miss the 4+ fill no pain, absolutely. And then 9 is saying broken. This is the Aquilons. Broken in terms of move, block, and secondary scoring. Yeah, sure. Cool. Yeah, and again, another person is saying, I'd rather have 6 Ogryns than 3 Bulgryns, feeling nearly the same cost. Yeah, I get it. I get it, yeah. Yeah, Watchdog Van Etten, one of my patrons, is saying he's going to take 12 Ogryns. Oh, chasing the meta, James. Yeah, and okay, so Ogryns, they have actually got a similar melee output. They've got 4 attacks at 6-1-1. It's not 7-1-2 like Bulgryns, but 6-1-1 at strength at 4 attacks. It's going to pick up most light infantry. Yeah, you're basically doing the same thing. Now, someone's raised a good point. Raising Rune Lords has said, shelf Bulgryn, take Grey Knight turnos instead. Now, that is a fantastic point because I've really thought about this purely because I want to paint something different besides this just Aquilons and tanks because I get to paint something which is grey and shiny because they're cool. But the one thing I was thinking about with Grey Knights is that are they a survivable? Because they've got 4 wounds, which is automatically better. But they're toughness 5, 2+ save, 4+ invul save, and they can heal back an entire dude per turn or per command phase, whatever it is. So that definitely has got a good edge to it. Now, I do because I've dabbled with them on Battle Scribe, but I think their output's not amazing. If correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I think they on the charge they get lethal hits, yeah. But then they're only strength 5, AP 2 damage. I've got to try and pull this up. I'm going to battle through this, but so it's definitely an interesting perspective. And given their deep strike, that's also very effective as well. And then you give them a banner, the OC3. So maybe, yeah, Grey Knights, because Grey Knights are 210 versus 220 for 6 Bulgryn. I'm trying to find it, but I've thought about that. And then linked to that, which is all going to tie together a nice little bow at the end, is that if you start taking things like Grey Knights, do you need Lord Solar? And hold that point for a second, because I'm going to come back to those. I stared a couple of fictitious lists. I want to look at Nassim's list first. So someone's saying Ogryns have a different role than Bulgryns. Yes, so agreed. But that then ties into how you play the army. Yeah, so let's hold that point because I'll look at a couple of fictitious lists and we can try and work it out together what Jeff should go with because I have no idea what I'm going to go with. Now, let's now get on to let's just get someone's got a perspective on Grey Knights. You don't know if you'll be I just know that I'll be investing in some Grey Knight turnos instead. Those, yeah, okay. So this person, Dark Ja, is saying 210 feels. So is it 220 for 6 Bulgryn versus 210 for 5 Grey Knights? Now, what can do more in inverted commas? And I'm going to finally find the freaking data sheet after I've baffled through this app because I don't know. Have Grey Knights got the grenade keyword? Because again, I'm just trying to pull out like what is extra. So here we go. Grey Knights. They don't have grenade, but they do have grenade. Okay, but they toughness 5, 2+ save, 4+ invul save, 3 wounds, not 4, as I said. Okay, they got force weapons. That's 4 attacks, hitting on 3s at 6-2-2, 4+ invul save, and on the charge you get lethal hits. Now, will they do as much damage as 4 attacks, hitting on 3s at 7-1-2? I would actually say maybe they would. Now, deep strike is deep strike. Deep strike is a fantastic mechanic. Obviously, you can deep strike Bulgryns, albeit reinforcements from the table edge. Yeah, and then again, I check out Goonhammer, which you should definitely check out if you want to get a bit of a hot take on things. And they kind of think that making Bulgryn's 220 is kind of pushing us towards Grey Knight. So you definitely have got a good point there. Maybe Grey Knights just replace your 6-man Bulgryn Blood. So now let's get down onto Nassim's list. Nassim is based in the UK, and he played at a Birmingham tournament, which had about 70 players. And super thanks to one of my patrons, I think Guardsman, I'm going to forget your name, Justin. Oh, this is awful. But he gave basically put this on me. So obviously this was using the old point lists, old point costs. And you can basically see a couple of key things here. So Cadian Command Squad, Lord Solar, Militarum Tempestus Command Squad, 1 tank commander with Grand Strategist. It's then 1 Cadian Shock attached to Lord Solar, attached to the Cadian Command Squad for Objective Sticky. Jungle Fighters ×2, a Chimera, 1, 2, 3 Bulgryn Blobs, Mega Blobs of 6, a Hellhound, 2 Luminous Battle Tanks, and 10 Scions attached to the Command Squad, of course, and then 2 Tempestus Aquilons squads. Now, this list has gone up by, obviously, 140 points. So, obviously, the 18 Bulgryn, the Tank Commander. And then if we think about how Nassim would approach this, and I'm going to guess, and I'm going to try and get him on an interview, actually, because I assume David would know him. I'll see if we can get his contact details to try and interview Nassim as well. It'd be super cool, because he lives in London as well. So I'm lucky to live in London as well. Is that, what would he do? So he'd have to basically drop 6 Bulgryns, yeah? And then he'd have 40 points to spend on something else. So probably drop Grand Strategists and then, take some more Catachan Jungle Fighters, for example. But that is a big drop. If you've got to drop 6 Bulgryn out of these lists, that is a big drop. It's obviously because, and again, if you again, I'm not the greatest player, but I've seen all the best lists have got 18 Bulgryn because they're just ridiculous. They just stand there, and then they typically get used in turns 3.5, 4, 5, if that makes sense. You basically, you're playing all the skirmish game turns 1 and 2. You're probably trying to play a bit of an attrition game, get your tanks in the mix, blow up some stuff, and then basically the Bulgryn seal the deal, just stand on objectives and just bully everyone. So if you have to fundamentally drop that, for example, that's a big change. Now, of course, he could drop a Hellhound and Grand Strategist. He'd almost be there. He could drop a Luminous Battle Tank. But it is enough of a points change that it will require a rethink on the list composition. Now, for example, as well, I'm just getting a broader perspective, is that obviously Space Wolves have had a massive points increase, and they need that because it's just ridiculous. And I think they went up the typical build by 180. So some lists have been even worse, and that will require rethink as well. So you can see in the scenes list points changes is pretty rounded. The one thing which is just like David's list is there's not much battle line, which doesn't lean into the OC opportunity that we have. But that actually, as we'll look at some fictitious lists I've been playing with, I think requires a significant degree of play skill, which I don't have. Because, and again, I said at the beginning of the live stream, if you just joined, is that definitely Bulgryns have been a crutch for us as guard players because they're just crazy good. They just stand there as cop abuse. So if you take them out, you basically need to compensate their loss through increased ability, which I don't have. We'll see how we go, because I've been thinking about it a lot. But so let's then look at some fictitious lists, because then this doesn't look too crazy as far as pre-point change lists were concerned, albeit the Aquilons and only 1 tank commander with 2 Luminous battle tanks. So let's now play around with some ideas that Jeffrey's got. Guardsman Hannon. So the first one, I'm going to zoom in a bit, leans into the tank commander opportunity. So as I said at the beginning of the chat, is that I've never played tank commanders. But then I speak to David, he's like, dude, they're awesome. Like, you have to play them. I'm like, okay, well, if David's using them, they must be good because he's the world's best guard player. And that being said, as I said before, just because someone's using the best units doesn't mean they're going to be good for you. But maybe this is the way to think about it, is that maybe tank commanders are a good unit, and maybe I need to become a better player at using them, because they shouldn't be dying from melee. And they will, if you play World Eaters, they're going to die to melee. That's just how it is. But if you're playing against Tau or some Space Marine flavor, you should be positioned the tanks in a way that they can shoot on death by getting shot via shooting, because you've covered them in screens. Now, this, and I'm going to look at a couple other lists, is that then the question comes, what is Lord Solar doing in the equation if you've then got 2 units now, which I never took before, that can give tank orders or squadron orders, yeah? So do we actually need Lord Solar? Now, this list is the safe option because this semi-replicates what I've used before, because you've got Lord Solar with a command squad with Acadian Shock, and that obviously means you've got objective sticky, so they can get in the mix in the lake, and they can come off the home objective once your opponent drops all the deep strike reinforcements and start and play in the middle and get in the mixer. Then the 2 tank commanders, the jungle fighters and the chimeras. I've then got 2 extra Acadian Shock in there, and again, I'm thinking from them just basically playing the OPSEC game, and where they'll basically be deployed is typically towards the center of the deployment zone and basically fed out to basically get in the way of the center objective, for example. Now, 3x3 Bulgryn. Previously, I had 6 and then 2x3. So maybe having 3 of them is fine. And I found actually it is fine. And look, worst case, if you have to put, obviously this isn't the same, but if you have to put them into a demon prince, you just put 2 squads into a demon prince. You put 6, but in 2 different blobs. And that actually could be beneficial because then they've got to activate into separate things as opposed to one big blob. I don't know. Then it's Scions, a blob of 10, because their damage output is deceptively strong, as you all know, with the reroll hits or the reroll ones. And then Aquilons by 2. I think these will become a competitive staple for all of you out there who have got aspirations to be competitive, because as we said in the chat, deep strike 3 inches with 10 glorious little dudes lined up to turn off a charge, to contest an objective, to block a massive knight from moving is just ridiculously good. And they then become a fantastic reinforcement candidate, because if you are running 3, if you're chasing the meta, and you've got, that's basically 4 times you can drop and just block your opponent and just really, make them quite salty in inverted commas. Then Scout Sentinels are 55 points. They're fantastic, and I like blobs of 1. And a 11 Rush Battle like 170 points, so 40 points in the bank to basically spend some enhancements, like maybe Grand Strategist or 1 Tank Commander and Drill Commander for the lethals on 5. So if you keep still, to make one of the Tank Commanders even more spicy. So this is list number 1. This is probably the safe option. Let me just check the chat for any commentary. Oh, we've got a couple of comments here. So yes, Justin, that's his name. James, thank you. How could I forget Guardsman Coquelin? That's his name. Apologies, Justin, if you're out there. Let's just check. So someone's been saying, I've been experimenting with a couple of units of Subductors. I don't actually know what they are. Subductors, sorry. Grey Knight Terminators. Maybe a Death Watch kill team in several combinations. Maybe 1 Bulgryn and 1 or 2 of the other. Yeah, so I don't know what Subductors do. Apologies. I know they're one of the Imperial Agent ones, but Grey Knight Terminators and Death Watch kill team. So I don't know them too well, but from what I've been seeing, they're actually pretty good. Now, someone else is saying, I took 2nd at a 16-player RT on Saturday. Oh, man, fantastic. At the Average Brawl near London, UK. No problem in the list. Oh, don't tell me that. Don't say that. I'm joking, obviously, because you've obviously made it work. So someone went 2nd at RT. Fantastic work. Yeah, okay. And I switched the Cadians for more Cadians using for 5-man science. Got maybe a good point. Watchdog there. That's it. Already James is doing mathematics, looking at my list. His brain's like that. Although the only problem, James, is I don't have that many jungle fighters. Although you can just proxy Cadians, obviously. So thank you. Subductors are the 11 model agents with 3+, 4+. Oh, they're the like our BTs with shields, aren't they? That's I remember now. Yeah, and as I understand, with the our BTs units, you buy the 1 box set and you can change them all different types, can't you? They all have like different options. But yeah, thank you for explaining that. That is helpful. Yeah, because a 3+, 4+. Yeah, cheers, man. 3+, 4+ invul save is fantastic. Yeah, and I can just proxy. I know I can just proxy Cadians for jungle fighters, James, but I'm a bit more respectable in inverted commas, as some people say. Now, that's list number 1. Now let's play around list number 2. Now, which one is this one? Now, this makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm joking, yeah. Well, it makes me uncomfortable, but you can see here I've gone for a bit of a change. And the concept here, hopefully you can see it quite well. Okay, so Ursula Creed, I'll explain myself in a second. Cadian Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghosts for some janky mission play. 2 Tank Commanders, again, Jungle Fighters, Cadian Shock, 2 Chimeras, the Aquilons, So the Scions, 3 Scout Sentinels, Limb and Rust battle tanks ×2, and a Hellhound. So if you take Bulgryns out completely, you need to basically replace that stand on objectives and be annoying with something else. Now, Limb and Rust battle tanks are 2+8. I mean, you all know this stuff, so it's all obvious. Now, can they absorb as much damage as Bulgryns can? No. But then, do you basically play the game a bit more strategically? And this, again, is why I sort of justify bringing extra Cadian Shock. And, you've then got basically, and conceptually, it could be Jungle Fighters and Chimera, scout move, Jungle Fighters get out, get in the way of things. Cadian Shock, hustle up behind them, jump on the Chimera, and you play that game twice. Yeah, you're basically just screening it out. Now, as I said, is that I think using infantry to screen is significantly harder from a skill point of view than using Bulgryns. This is me saying this because I know it'll be tough, because I remember in 9th edition, like I played all through 9th and it sucked ass with no codex for a while, but using infantry to stand in the way of things is tough, yeah, because obviously they can absorb run when of damage against most things and disappear, versus Bulgryns can stand like 2 turns of it potentially if they bounce the right way. But this list is obviously going a bit of a different direction with the Limb and Rust battle tanks. And the one thing is that if you take Limb and Rust battle tanks, they don't need orders. So then actually, the tank commanders can order themselves. They can make themselves more effective. I'm sure they've got to give orders to the Chimera. But whilst I put the orders here is that Ursula Creed, she has got CP efficiency. You lose Lord Solar, obviously. He dropped that extra CP every your command phase. So Ursula can make stratagems for free, which essentially is the same thing, albeit she's got to be 12 inches away from somebody. So you got 2 3 regimental orders there. You've then got Gaunt's Ghost, fantastic mission play. But that being said, if you've got Gaunt's Ghost and you've got Aquilons, aren't they achieving the same thing? Probably they are, because they come up, come down. So maybe you don't need Gaunt's Ghost. But this is already starting to shift towards a bit of a change in perspective. Now, again, speaking to David, when I spoke to him off camera, and I explained my list to him, which at that point was 2 Limb and Rust battle tank and 2 Exterminator Limb and Rust. He's like, dude, that's too many tanks. He's like, it's too many hulls. I was like, oh, really? And I said, when I played LGT, I made 2 Rogal Daunts. He's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah. And again, a very competitive point of view is they're just too big for terrain sets. Now, UKT return is quite tight, and definitely across the 4 missions you play, the 4 deployment zones you play, there are at least 3 where they can be only deployed in certain spots, and they can be stuck in that spot all game. And that definitely is search and destroy quarter deployment zone. In UKT to terrain, there's 1 spot they get stuck unless you reinforce them. But again, from a very competitive point of view, that is a massive limitation, because they can't go across the entire board. Now, also, and again, David's taken this from a top-down perspective, is that he basically thinks that 4 tanks is too much. Now, 4 Limb and Rust battle tanks, too much of a point. You should be spending on more bodies, for example. So this is list number 2. I'll just check the comments in a moment. So Tank Commander Watchdog Vanity has said that for the Sentinels, group them all together. Now that comes on to list number 3. Well, let me zoom in. So this is obviously it's a subtle change, and there's a bit of potential stuff to be spoken about and removed maybe. Is again, so Ursula Creed, Cadian Command Squad, so they live together. 2 tank commanders, a Cadian Castellan. We'll come to that back in that in a second. Jungle Fighters ×2, Cadian Shock ×3, 2 Chimeras, Scions, Aquilons and Kazrakin, and then 2 blobs of 3 Sentinels and a Hellhound. Now, Kazrakin, however you want to call them, or Kin, as they call it in some novels, definitely are a unit which is good, but not amazing. But this list is semi-inspired by, I saw pre-balanced data, sort of pre-points change. Someone won a tournament, I think about a 30-person tournament, just with no vehicles. They just had loads of like elite infantry, so Scions everywhere, and Kazkin. So Kazkin still can be very effective. And the other way, again, to always conceptualize them is they don't need an order, because they can order themselves. And if you do stick in with a Cadian Castellan, you're suddenly getting sustained hits. That's actually quite spicy, because they could come in from reinforcements, order themselves for rapid fire range. The Cadian gives them +1 to hit. That was hitting on 2s. and 6 as a sustain suddenly becomes quite spicy. And then they can fall back and shoot if they get in the mixer as well. So I do admit openly, I don't think this is a strong pick. This probably could be recycled back into more jungle fighters. So I've got 3 squads of jungle fighters. But this list here would be highly fragile. Yeah. Now, as you know, 3 Scout Sentinels at 165 points is ridiculously cheap. It's very cheap. But maybe it should be 3 Armored Sentinel, 1 by 3 Scout Sentinel, 1 by 3 Armored Sentinel, because Armored Sentinels with a 2+ save and a toughness 8 is just crazy good. But the way, and again, this is also inspired by David, is that every unit here should have a role within the game. And this is actually a big ask for idiots like me, is that what do all these units do? Because I can distinctly say that, you know, in my defense, I can distinctly say scout move. Okay, let's be obvious. Scout move, scout move, scout move. Like early skirmish, yeah? Early skirmish, getting in the mixer, pissing off your opponent, having to come out and play. The Cadian shock would then be the second wave of rubbish coming in, with the Kazkin maybe being one squad would probably be what would come in from reinforcements, one would be rapid ingress to basically threaten an outlying objective. The Scions for some murder play, and the Aquilons to get in the way. But what I'm getting to with David's point is that he literally has mapped out every single unit in what part of the game they'll do what they need to do. Now, again, I've already conceptualized in turn 1 and 2, but what makes you an amazing player, again, getting perspective from him and Lewis Smith, is they've literally mapped the entire game out. And that's not something I can do. I can't even think so. And again, going back to what David said, is that he looks at the deployment zone and how you deploy. This is all obvious. You all know this, is that dictates the entire shape of the game. Now, obviously, for armies which can move 14 inches with jet bikes, for example, that's a bit of a different story because they go wherever they want. But for armies like us, we have to respect terrain and move maximum 9 inches on infantry, for example, or a 13-inch chimera. You basically can't reshape the entire battlefield once you've deployed. But anyway, so I'm drilling this point because I think this is something I need to think about a lot, and I might actually spend time in the next couple of weeks literally mapping out all of the UK T2 deployment zones and literally plotting where I deploy every single unit and what they're going to do over the course of the game. Of course, you can't pick your opponent does if they bum rush you with all their units. You need to respond, but that could be a way to improve the way we play. So let me just check the comments for any more perspectives. Okay, so Watchdog Benetton agrees 4 tanks feels like a lot. But then, that being said, we've all seen out there people who play loads of tanks. And definitely, as I looked at all the winning or top placing lists in the previous point changes, that you would consistently see like Rogel Dawn double ups winning, triple Dawns winning, tournaments coming top 3. So, you know, and then loads of tanks, like dudes taking like 5 or 6 tanks. So there obviously is merit to it, and people are making it work. Now, this again is getting to a wider conversation about us guard players, and again, this is highly contentious. It could be quite viewed as quite rude. Is that David and his friend Vic VJ, and they've got their merits for saying this, is they think the guard community aren't a high skill community, and that definitely. And I'm not high skill, so that's fair. A sample of 1, and this will all tie together. Just stand by. But I think, you know, if someone can use a Rogel Dawn to win a tournament, 3 of them, for example, they probably are. They obviously are a very, very good player. Now, are they? Let's just make up some fancy talk to justify our existence. Are they like lifetime guard players? Because I'm a lifetime guard player. I've been playing since 8th. I dabbled with Custodians and a bit of 9th. I dabbled briefly. Now binned them because, well, they are crap now, so you can understand that. But I'm a lifetime playing guard player. I'll play them until I retire in 25 years, 28 years, probably with the way that the world's going. Probably 30 years actually, retire at the age of 70. But I never play guard, and I'm not jumping around. So what I'm getting to is that maybe, as we're discussing in the chat, is that just because some top players can can win a tournament with 3 Rogel Dawns, maybe they've played multiple different armies jumping all over the place. That's why they can do it. But anyway, so that kind of makes sense to some degree. I'm sort of justifying my existence as not a great player. But this list here makes me feel very nervous because it's quite fragile. Again, we could just go full tank company. You could bring six tanks, and suddenly some lists just can't deal with that because you've got, you know, toughness 11, 2+ save, which in cover is a 1+ save, inverted commas. They just can't clear that. But this list feels a bit naked in inverted commas. But in its defense, you've got loads of OC. Again, we could basically make it, you know, 3 jungle fighters, 3 Cadian shock, and again, as per Watchdog Van Etten is saying, is we could actually bin off, cut these, that's 15 points to recycle back somewhere else, is that we are basically leaning back into here the old-fashioned strength of Astra Militarum, which is loads of cheap bodies. Yeah, because this is obviously that's OC 100, OC 120. Theoretically, you could basically outcontest everything. But as I think about the games that I typically play, and again, turn one, you've got your scout move, everything comes out. It's you're basically either turning off your opponent's objective with jungle fighters, or you're holding an objective with a chimera with boys in it, or they've got out. And then basically you probably got 1 or 2 turns of basically them getting out OCing your objective, them getting murdered. And you could recycle this concept a couple of times. But by the time you get to, say, turn 3.5 or turn 4, if your opponent's pushed onto the objective, and this is just conceptualizing it, if the objective is that big and they've got everything covering the objective, you can't out OC them, obviously, because they cover the entire objective. So that means you need to start killing stuff. And that's where this list may struggle, because tank commanders, and again, I discussed it with Dave, and you all know this because you've all experienced the highs and lows of a demolished siege cannon. The D6 plus 3 is fantastic, and it's terrible because you could roll 4 shots. Granted, they're now hitting on 3s with lethals. It has boosted the number of, the actual number of hits, but then D6 damage is rolling the dice. Obviously, we always roll the dice, but and again, I asked Dave, it's like, what do you prefer, D6 damage or flat the damage? He goes, dude, D6, man, because. But then with this, and again, this is a good thing that we should take on board, is that he's not focused on necessarily what it does. He's more focused on what it does to your opponent. And thinking big brain stuff, mind games, is that, this actually on paper is absolutely terrifying. Strength 14, is that correct, chat? I think it's strength 14, AP3. AP3, strength 14 is freaking mental. Like that is beautiful. Like that is wounding all vehicles on 3s. It's murdering all infantry on 2s. And then if you give it fields of fight AP4, I mean, even AP2 with cover is still AP2. Like this on paper is brutally tasty for us. Obviously very swingy, but that's maybe the way to think about it, is actually these are not about what the damage they do. It's about what they do to your opponent's head. We're getting all like super into the mind games of board games. Yeah, okay. And then someone has said, someone's been very nice. Hey, Hannon, I hope it's going well. Love your channel. Thank you. Much appreciated. Very nice of you. Yeah, okay. And this actually is 2 good points. My cat's just come back. I'll let him out, my kitty cat. Is that Guard actually, and this is also agreed by David Gaylard, is that Guard actually is a very hard army to master. Yeah, now this actually, and this, again, it's a nasty, it can be viewed as quite a nasty comment that the Guard community are a bunch of crap players. And that being said, which I agree to a point, is that as 2 of the people in the chat have said, that this army is very hard to master. And again, I'm justifying my poor play overall. And I think reflecting, I take a long time to learn something. When I get it, I know it very well. That's basically been the way I've approached pretty much everything in my 40 years of existence. I take ages to learn, but once I know it, I know it pretty well. But that being said, it's like, if you're new to Astra Militarum and you buy the Start Collecting box set and you get a Scout Sentinel, Field Ordnance Battery, 2 squads of Cadian Shock, and a command squad, and you go and play at your local gaming store against World Eaters, you'd be like, this is freaking awful. This is horrible. My guys don't even survive. I put them on objectives, bolters destroy them, and then chainsaws cut them in half, which they shouldn't the law. Yeah, that's how the law works. But if you're new to Astra Militarum, it can be pretty nasty when you get into it. And I'm just trying to think, like, when I got into Guard in 8th edition, like I struggled to get all the different data sheets was one thing. And I remember, obviously, 8th edition is different. What I used to put infantry squads on objective and be like, they're going to hold the objective, and then just get blasted off the board. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Anyway, so all that being said, I think, again, I'm just trying to make us all feel a bit better, is that it is a very hard army to master. And David, again, agrees. He said, when you don't get the plan right with Guard, it just collapses. And that is actually, I think it's the way it should be, because, again, I take a balance of competitive play and law, is that Astra Militarum is an army built on, I mean, we're getting into basically what modern armies are built on. In modern warfare, we're talking like the unfortunate situation of Ukraine, is that it's combined arms. Yeah, the infantryman is is ineffective by himself. The artillery man is ineffective by himself. A tank is ineffective by itself. A helicopter, you know what I mean? It's like not like from an overall strategic point of view, they're ineffective by themselves. But when they're combined together, that's when they're highly effective and can defeat the enemy at a strategic level. We're not talking about individual engagements and like one guy shooting one guy. Obviously, the better man will win. But that's the way Guard probably should be played. Should play out is that if you don't get the plan right, you will get basically like pummeled, which you definitely do. So, yeah, I definitely think, and then, you know, if you've only ever played Guard, and this is, I said at the beginning of the chat, is that I think definitely if you want to get better, you want to start playing other armies. Now, I'm not saying to go and buy other armies. I'm saying get on Tabletop Simulator, struggle through the download process and making it all work. I'm relatively tech savvy, although I'm 40, so maybe I'm getting a bit old, but like I sucked at setting up Tabletop Simulator. But once it's set up, it is so good to practice because you can literally, what I basically did is I grabbed the second place orc list from LGT, built it and tried it. Then I found a Space Wolf Thundercav Wolf Jail lists and played it and got my ass kicked because I don't know how to play them at all. But I do think there is merit to playing to other armies. Like giving yourself a bit of a perspective on how to navigate a different army will make a better play for Guard. And then also, as per what I said earlier, some of you in the chat, is that you need to basically know what other armies do. You want to have a fairly good degree that you know what Tyranids do, because I know they got bugs and they got loads of little bodies, but I can't tell what they actually do. But now I know what Space Wolves do. Now I know what Orcs do, already did. But then I probably would better position when I play Orcs, if I play them again, or Space Wolves, or they'll probably change the lists, is I know how to manage them because I know what to look out for. So yeah, I definitely think massively encourage everyone out there to get Tabletop Simulator, to basically try other armies, because naturally as you try them, you learn them. So already I know that, you know, Space Wolves or Stormlance can advance and charge. They can fall back and charge. One of them can call the War. He gets rerolled. They get reroll charges. They get reroll hits on the charge. Is when the Space Wolf Thundercav is the most effective because they get damage. Anyway, go on and go on. But like that, I think is a way to improve, which will make the Guard community a better bunch of players. Yeah, so that's a bit of a ramble. It's definitely how I'm viewing things. And hopefully gives you a bit of a thought process, inspiration on how you can get better as a competitive player. Maybe. So let me see. Let me check all the chat. Okay, so someone's saying no Basilisk. Alan is saying, I think we're more likely to be fluff plays because the faction is relatable and customizable. Fantastic point, Alan. Yeah, so yeah, I play Guard, and again, I had a great chat with David. Is that he plays Guard because it's cool. You know, you drive your head, you go da 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 da, you go you know, throwing grenades, and you go fix bayonets, and you know, I think some of you will know I served in the military years ago. I was in the army, I was a rifleman, and I sort of picture myself where I had my Oz Star in the Australian Army with a lad's got in the future of a helmet, you know, shooting a Tyranid, like that type of thing. So definitely, I think it is very relatable. And you know, again, you can't picture yourself as a Tyranid warrior. You could picture yourself as Drakari, but then you'd be like some weird sadist. And then even Space Marines, it's like, could you imagine yourself being taken from a family at the age of 12 or 13, passing these trials where literally 1 in 100 pass and the rest die because they get poisoned or they freeze, they get in by a wolf or something. And then they inject you with steroids, blah, 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 and you get all the extra lungs. And at the age of like 14, you're a scout. Like, it's just, the story is so grim for Space Marines when you think about it. Or I'm going all over the place. It's just fun, actually. Or being an orc, you're born in like a mushroom, and then you're like, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, absolutely good point. And then Sly Marbo can just do everything himself. Yes, he can. And then again, I discussed it with David. Is that you know, Sly Marbo, if he was 50 points, he would be, I think, an auto include. But 65 points is just ridiculous. Like, I mean, that's just dumb. So if he could Overwatch for free, if he could. That would be good. If his pistol was 18 inches, it would be fantastic. But given he's lone op and he's got a 12-inch pistol, there's just like no point, because once he can shoot, you can be shot. Like, it's just dumb. Now, Tank Commander is saying, we're not a shooting army, we're a points denial. Oh, James. So again, a great point that David said is that, you know, when you play a game of Guard, you should lose all your models, have a couple left into the game, and basically win on the scoreboard. So that conceptually is something I need to sort of really adjust my thinking, is that, and again, this for new players is tough, quite hard to absorb, is that, you know, you don't want to lose all your models. Like, it feels really bad when you're taking off like 6 infantry in one turn, But if that 60 infantry has turned off 25 points your opponent's scoring and you win the game, you've won the game. So it's a good point, James. I definitely agree. And I think it takes a bit of an adjustment is that, with this list in front of us here, there's enough jiggery-pokery that you could, for 3 turns consistently, basically just outscore your opponent. Outscore from either maxing your secondaries, which you should always be doing with guard for this type of list, and or turning off their, putting them on a 4, putting them on a 5 for primary, for example, because you've got enough resources here, got enough OC with these idiots in inverted commas that just dump them on objectives. They get blasted next turn, great, they get blasted next turn. But if your opponent is sitting on a, say, a 4 for primary, whatever it works out to be, or a 5, and you're on a 10 or an 8, and that racked up over a couple of turns, that'll win you the game in inverted commas. So that definitely is one to think about. Now, someone said Basilisks. Now, I've definitely, Basilisks or Earthshade Carriage batteries. Now, the thing about that is that now the Basilisks, for example, and I personally don't think there's merit for them anymore. We have to learn a different style. But so Basilisks and Earthshade Carriage battery have got a role because -2 to move, advance, and charge it's a fantastic control piece because you can basically really bog things down. They can basically go nowhere. And then, strength 8, AP2, 2 damage will pick up medium infantry. Now, hitting on 4s with no lethals is hitting on 4s with no lethals. It's not good. But then within that, you've then got the Basilisks, which is 125, 135 points, whatever it is. And the way to maybe think about it is that the Basilisks has lost, well, they've both lost out, but the Basilisks no longer needs an order because it obviously gets heavy. You get +1, you're back on 4s, versus the Earthshade Carriage battery hits on 5s. Needs an order to be hitting on 4s. So personally, I don't think there's much of a role for artillery anymore. In competitive play, I haven't seen it in any competitive lists because I keep a bit of an eye on the competitive scene. But then the other way to think about it is that just sits on your home objective. It keeps it safe all game. If you take a Basilisk, it's a vehicle. It can contribute to the game. You can drive around and use its flame or hunter killer missile. But broadly speaking, I don't think there's a role for artillery at the moment. Now, you could go fully back into artillery. Hitting on 4s, rolling the dice. Maybe that's a way to go back to it because obviously with a Scout Sentinel, hitting on 4s, roll 1s is still better than hitting on 4s by itself. So that maybe answers that point there. Cool. And then so Beowulf is saying Shadows of the Warp from Tune. It's just okay. Now I remember because I lost the game on that. Is that Shadows? They call the warp thing. You basically roll battle shock and everything, and you fail everything sitting on your objectives. Been there, done that. Sucks ass. Someone is asking Tech Priest to repair your armor. So again, I haven't seen it much in competitive play, but rolling out a Rogue Dawn with 4+ invul save, which obviously works in both melee and combat, is brutally good. Now, maybe that is actually I think I've seen one winning list. I saw a list with a tank company and a tech priest. And even in this list here, if you put a tech priest and basically give 3 scout sentinels a 4+ invul save, or 3 armored sentinels a 4+ invul save, actually, 4+ invul save actually for armored sentinels and a Rogue Dawn actually, if we just talk about this, because they're a 2+ save, and then you've got a 4+ invul save. Oh, that's a $sign. 4+ invul save is that basically means that it takes AP3 and higher to basically pay off in inverted commas, because AP2 puts you on a 4+, you're basically not saving anything. So I'm just thinking AP3 melee is relatively rare from my experience, and I could be wrong. AP2 melee is quite common, like Power Fist to AP2. But with this knowledge, do you position the board state that that, okay, I'm making this up. I can't even think of an example of AP3 melee, but if someone's got AP3 melee, they can do it. Do you put that vehicle with his little tech priest babysitter behind it to basically deal with that? Because that's when it pays off, And obviously, if your opponent's got melters and etc., or fire lances, whatever they're called, AP4, suddenly, obviously, that pays off. Now, I haven't seen them in many competitive lists. Doesn't mean they can't work. That could definitely be a way to think. And the other jiggery poker, you could basically send out Scout Sentinels, because then A 3+ save with a 4+ invul save, that's where it pays off a lot more, yeah, because obviously AP2 will push that onto the invul save versus obviously then got a 5+ save. So definitely has got potential. And I think within this archetype here, I've got the points to basically play with it. But then, you're playing 5 turns. Are you going to have basically 5 vehicles, 1 vehicle per turn to give that to? And the other way to think about a tech priest is that that's 50 points, 45 points, whatever it is, that all he's doing is buffing another unit. Now, that can be said for, say, Ursula, she just buff other units. But then, a tech priest agency, it truly is just a support piece. He can't actually contribute to the game. And then, again, the big brain thinking here is that if Guard is meant to be an army, we're meant to have no models left in turn 5, but you max the scoreboard. You need every single model to basically do something. Now, I'm going all over the place, so stick with me, but you can see in here, there's a key exclusion of Lord Solar, yeah, because I kind of think if tank commanders can look after vehicles, because now you're taking them, yeah, because now they've suddenly got lethal hits and they can order themselves, and you don't have Bulgryns, you don't need Lord Solar, because obviously Lord Solar was granted +1 CP, which is kind of supported by Creed, because she can give free stratagems with the 12 inches. Then you should always, and I forget this, you should always be using your Vox casters on the Kazkin, on the Scions, on the Jungle Fighters and the Cadian Shock. Always use your Vox caster for the 5+ or a 4+ if they're near an officer to get the CP back. But then Lord Solar, he's 125 points. You're suddenly freeing up, for example, 70 points if you're basically replacing with Ursula Creed. And Ursula Creed obviously is good because that 2 orders. But then a huge potential tactical downside is that, not being able to redeploy 3 units by Lord Solar is actually a very good tool. And David did reference this, is that, he'll do a little jiggery pokery. Well, he'll just, for example, deploy 2 tank commanders on the line, like in a really ridiculous spot, to play mind games with. You pick him up, redeploy him somewhere, or put him in reinforcements. But that, maybe at the skill level I'm operating, maybe that isn't that good of a tool, because the amount of times I've just literally deployed my army, literally shuffled a couple of the units around and said I've redeployed 3 units is ridiculously hilarious. So maybe I don't actually need Lord Solar anymore. So yeah, so maybe this is a bit of a take on it. Let me check the chat for any more nice comments. Someone's saying, so the reason I love to play Guard is a human way of tactics and las guns, but I've got a collection of tanks too, and I'm glad the tank commander's got squadron. Yeah, so absolutely, yeah. Waves of human beings with bayonets, flak armor, and a helmet with a las gun. The tank commanders of squadron, I covered at the beginning of the chat, is that some people have said it's weird they never had it, but actually, I was just thinking about this, is that the infantry officers don't have regiment. So why should the tank commanders have regiment? So I think it's squadron. So I think it's a very deliberate choice they've done that, actually. Because why? And now they can't give regiment to Cadian Castellans, nor do they need to, because then you could reinforce a Cadian Castellan, for example. Yeah, and then obviously there's a bit of inconsistency with the Scion Command Squad. They've got regiment; they can be reinforced, whilst Platoon Command Squad and the Cadian Command Squad don't. But it would actually have made, and again, thinking or like lore-wise, is that the squadron obviously is, well, this doesn't make much sense when I say it, but the squadron is actually the 3 tanks, and then it's led by a platoon commander. So actually the tank commander, platoon commander, doesn't need squadron. But anyway, so, I think actually it was a deliberate addition of this, because, and again, I think actually Guard, broadly speaking, have come out of the points change. It's completely fine. Completely fine. Bulgryns have gone up, but multiple things have been buffed or have got better. So I think we should feel relatively positive with the slate. And then, as I said, the Aquilons are proving to be, according to some players, broken because they're just so ridiculously good at just, turning off your opponent's game by just screening them out, not doing much damage, but just getting in the way of things. Is that, broadly speaking, I think we're in quite a good spot overall. Now, as you know, there'll be a balanced status and a true one coming in December, because they've said later this year, which will be December, because we're already in like mid to late October. And that could bring a whole lot more change, because I think, broadly speaking, Guard is performing very well. But maybe if people start to drop Bulgryns like that, like I do, maybe we don't perform as well. But overall, I think we're in quite a good place. Right, so let me check for any final comments. Raising. So I will check. So a lovely chap is saying check out it on BCP, but I don't have the BCP login. I don't have the subscription, so I can't actually view the list. But I will find it, Raising Rune Lords, and have a look because I love to see winning. And again, if you say you got no Bulgryns, I'm going to check that. Actually, genuinely look at it because I need all the inspiration I can get. So I'm going to call it stop there because I want to paint some Aquilons. Well, it's almost 11 o'clock here. Bollocks. 11 p.m. So hopefully an interesting live stream. I've rambled for a good 70 minutes. I love to see, obviously, people in the chat. Love to talk to you. I love the bounce back of ideas. And I really appreciate you joining and also your support overall. So I'll do these every Sunday as best as possible. I don't have any family commitments. I hope to see you next Sunday, the 27th at 9:30 UK time, which will be whatever time it is for you around the world. So thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time. All the best. Cheers.